Welcome to the Reconvening Council meeting of Thursday, July 23rd. We're convening this under electronic means as authorized by the Solicitor General. Ministerial Order number M192. If I lose connection, then the meeting will be paused until I'm reconnected. If Council loses connection during the voting process, we will pause the process until you're reconnected, and you have the contacts to get help with that. We're proceeding as usual with audio only, but presentations and vote results will be projected to viewers when available. Council is also reminded that we need to make sure your video is enabled so we can maintain quorum. I do want to acknowledge that we're on the unceded territories of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, and thank them for their generosity for all who live on these lands. And a big shout out to staff who do an awesome job, especially during this COVID-19 remarkable results from the work. And thanks very much to the clerks who have been doing a ton of work during these extended council sessions. So thanks very much, clerks. And can we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Stewart in the chair. Councillor Carr.
Here.
Councillor DiGenova.
Present.
Councillor Fry. Councillor Fry. Councillor Swanson.
Here.
Councillor Hardwick.
Present.
Councillor Wiebe.
Present.
Councillor Boyle.
Present.
Councillor Dominato. Councillor Dominato. Councillor Bly.
Present.
And Councillor Kirby-Young. The meeting has quorum, Mayor Stewart.
Thanks very much, Council. So the public is strongly urged to listen to the proceedings via the website, city's website, or the YouTube link, and follow along on Twitter at Van City Clerk for updates on the progress of the meeting, and I'll try to give verbal cues as we move along. Any comments can be sent using the web form, and that link, again, is tweeted out on at Van City Clerk. On Tuesday, July 21st, we dealt with the following items: unfinished business items 1 and 2, reports 1, 3, 4, and referral reports 1, 2, 3, and 4. We dealt with member motions 1 to 5, notice of council members' motions, new business inquiries, and other matters. So today we have 2 reports, which are 5 and 6 on the agenda, and 2 referral reports, 5 and 6, that were held for questions and debate and decision. We have 25 bylaws and 2 administrative motions, and please note administrative motion 3 has been withdrawn by staff. Council needs to adjourn by 11:30 and break for lunch, return at 1 p.m. to reconvene the Standing Committee on Policy and Strategic Priorities meeting, and then we have a public hearing starting at 6. Please note we don't have an in-camera meeting, so lunch will be from 11:30 to 1 o'clock, and hopefully that gives you some time to just get out and have a little walk or something, because it's been very long days, and it will be a long one this evening as we have a public hearing. And tomorrow we'll also be hearing from speakers, I imagine, all day. So please take advantage of our breaks for your personal health. Report 5, regulating exploding animal deterrent devices, bear bangers. On Tuesday, July 21st, Council heard from the 1 registered speaker on the item, and the staff recommendations were moved by Councillor DeGenova, seconded by Councillor Boyle. And now we're going to move to discussion, Council, and then on to a vote. So, Councillor DeGenova, I have you on the list for a debate, and please go ahead, up to 5 minutes.
Thanks so much, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to start by thanking staff for coming back so quickly with this. I know that when we moved forward with a firework ban, and it wasn't the limited sale of firework, it was indeed a firework ban in Vancouver. This was something that I was hearing concern about. It goes beyond just an annoyance or a nuisance. For some people, bear bangers in urban settings cause anxiety. I've heard from parents who have adolescent children who are are autistic or on the spectrum, and it's quite distressing to them. I've heard from families that have newborns. I think all of council has received these same emails that I have, and you know, it's a concern of mine. That being said, I think that if we're going to move forward with an appropriate way, just as, you know, fireworks can be sold in other municipalities and other places, and there's no real way to say that they can't be brought into Vancouver except for our bylaws. I think that it is important, considering the misuse of them in urban settings and what we've recently seen in the city of Vancouver, that we move forward with a ban on these. Also, just wanted to note that, you know, I myself personally, I've heard the idea of some amendments floated that they be allowed to be used for purchase. Going to go out into the back country. Oh,
you're cutting out a little bit, Councillor. Yes, we can. You're cutting out.
Thank you.
We can. You are cutting out a little bit.
That's why my connection's quite bad. So that's one of the reasons that sometimes to make sure that it's a little bit better, I have my video feed off as well. But I just wanted to say that I do have a concern that if we enable some stores to sell these, I'm not sure how there's any type of proof that someone gives that they're in fact going indeed in a place where there may be bears and they may need them. I'm not saying that bear bangers are not necessary or useful. They are in those settings, but until we have a way, a system where people can show proof, and I don't see any system such as that, I think that it's best that with an entire ban, considering the recent misuse of these. So I will be supporting the staff recommendations. And
thanks so much.
That's the motion. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Swanson, we've got you on the queue up to 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Yes, I submitted a motion.
For an amendment to this?
An amendment, yeah.
Yep, okay.
Sorry.
No problem.
Hopefully the clerk can bring it up. When the speaker for this item was speaking, it brought back a memory to me of my 10-year-old self going into a hardware store with my mother and buying three 357 Magnums because my dad, who was a prospector, was out in the bush, and he and the guys he was working with had been charged by bears. And in those days, which was 66 years ago, I guess they didn't have bear bangers. Anyway, it made me realize that there is a really legitimate use for these things, even though it is very bad when they're set off in the city. I totally agree with that. And then later this summer, I have a friend who went tree planting, and she was accosted by bears twice. And fortunately, she had the right stuff to repel them, not guns, fortunately. So I just thought that this amendment about to follow up on what the speaker suggested, that staff work to develop a permitting system for bear bangers, would maybe help prevent the bear bangers from going off in the city, but also allow people who need to buy them for actual legitimate reasons to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Swanson. We would need a seconder for this motion in order for it to go ahead.
Second, Councillor Bly.
Yes, Councillor Bly. You seconded it? Okay. Great, thanks. I'll move us over to I'm sorry, Council, I have us on the wrong queue. I'm going to move to the amendment queue now, but if before we do that, though, I am going to stop the clock for Councillor Swanson with 3 minutes left. And clerks, can we just reorganize that so I'm on the main queue in the order of that the speakers are listed? And I'll just wait for you to do that before I move to the amendment queue. Actually, I think clerks, those should be on the main queue, those names. That you've put in the amendment queue. Yeah, there we go. Great. And if you can move us to the amendment queue and start with Councillor Swanson, if she... Do you have anything else to say, Councillor? You're good? Okay. Okay, so Councillor, sorry, so we should be on amendment queue now. I'm going to clear the queue. So I've cleared the queue for the amendment. If anybody wants to speak to this, okay. Councillor Bly, thanks. Up to 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. And I'm happy to support this this amendment. Certainly happy to second it. I actually voted against the initial amendment a few weeks back because of this very reason. And I appreciate that we need to do something about the extremely disruptive, illegal setting off of bear bangers. There's a news story actually this morning of somebody being arrested for setting them off at the Howard Johnson. But I have to recognize too that this is an issue and a growing issue, but really has been the last couple of months where it's been as bad as it has been. And the reality is, and I don't know how many people on this council have used a bear banger or hike in the backcountry, but I do that quite often. It's not using bear bangers, but doing a lot of hiking and staying over. And these are very much a peace of mind. Now, I could go to an adjacent neighborhood, perhaps, or a community and get them, but I think there just has to be, we need to strike a balance here, and we need to respond to what's happening in the downtown core. But as I noticed last night, the gentleman was caught setting off the bear bangers and arrested without this bylaw. So the reality is we always have to determine, and that is always a struggle, is how much will banning something truly prevent the unlawful use of something. And I note the complaints that we get around other things like extremely loud motorcycles going over the Broad Street Bridge and other extremely loud disruptive noise. And so, you know, we're always weighing, striking a balance. And so I'm definitely in support of this amendment because we have to work with the community for which these bear bangers are designed to be used by, as well as do our very best to prevent any public nuisance that they're also causing. So I hope that council will support this so that we can continue to work with both stakeholders to address the issue in a responsible way through a permitting system. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fry, up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, thanks. I don't support this as a replacement amendment. I would consider it as an additional amendment, but I think we have to move ahead with the prohibition quite immediately. As somebody who does live in the downtown peninsula and has witnessed a lot of the use of these bear bangers and heard nothing but reports about it. I've seen them used as a warning system for police. I've seen them used for police in the area. I've seen them used in a threatening manner. We know from the report that they are being used as improvised explosive devices. There's a case in Alberta where a young man was killed because it had been furnished into a zip gun, so adding a bullet to it and turning it into an actual weapon. So I think, with all respect to Councillor Bly's comments, yes, this may be a newly emergent trend in the downtown east side, but it's certainly one that is not losing steam. I know you can go pick up, and you know, there's lots of reputable dealers, and I think Mr. Deacon demonstrated that he's that kind of a person, but I know that there's other less scrupulous operators in the city of Vancouver. I know of one particular place where my understanding is a lot of folks have been buying and redistributing the bangers that you can buy for, I think it's a box of 50 for $60. The actual gun or launchers are relatively inexpensive, and you can also furnish these with fuses and light them off for kicks. So all in all, I don't have the confidence that all people who are selling bear bangers in the city of Vancouver are as responsible as Mr. Deacon. I know that these are available to purchase online if for anybody who needs them or in neighboring vicinities. So I think that the risks to folks going out into the backcountry may be overstated because they still will be able to access it. I think the reality of the situation with bear bangers right now is the easy access of them in a retail capacity with unscrupulous dealers is creating a safety issue in the city of Vancouver. And I think that in and of itself is a challenge. Now, I would consider this amendment if it was not a replacement and did not get in the way of this, what I consider to be a significant, almost emergency measure. I would certainly entertain the idea of moving forward. Maybe we can find a new way to have licensed and registered dealership with a very accountable paper trail of who's buying these. But I can tell you firsthand that people are buying these boxes of 50 and selling them off individually on the streets of our city for nefarious use, and it just can't stand. So I don't support this amendment as it stands, as it's written. I certainly hope that perhaps somebody might consider an amendment to this to suggest it as an additional clause that does not get in the way of the prohibition, which I would consider. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Dejanova, up to 5 minutes.
Principal, I very much agree with the comments that were just made by Councillor Fry. I think that this won't have the teeth that we see with a full-on ban. And I argued the fact, to Councillor Bly's point, that with fireworks, if we ban something, sometimes that's not the best way to do it, because then there's not opportunities for education, permitting, in any ways. That being said, this, is something that we may have seen an arrest. There may be more than one arrest, but I've definitely received more complaints than I think there are arrests. And these are people who are in true distress, people who have had anxiety attacks, panic attacks, people who, as I've said, it creates trauma in their families. And from the stories that I've heard about bear bangers in recent times, especially, there were ways that they affected people that I hadn't seen before. So I very much agree. I also wanted to say that I think that this amendment's a bit problematic. And, I appreciate the speaker coming forward and expressing how it would affect, their customers and them and how they felt about it. But we're talking about one speaker here. So often when I hear other council members sometimes talk about lobby groups or special interest groups, this is one speaker. So to direct our staff kind of to work with one speaker to, maybe look at usurping something, I agree with Councillor Fry. I just don't think that that's the right way forward. And again, unless we were to move forward with something in Metro Vancouver, you leave you leave the limits of the city of Vancouver, and you can also buy them. You can buy them online, but at least we're sending a clear message. In the city of Vancouver, you can't buy them, because I can't imagine someone going up to the counter of, a sporting store or a specialty store that might stock these and being able to prove that they were indeed going into the backcountry. And, I think that they are a useful tool, to Councillor Bly's point, but until we have a way to move forward, I'm not sure that would be wise, or else we might as well just say that the bylaw doesn't have any teeth to it. That being said, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask a quick point of information, if that's all right, of staff.
Yep.
And staff, my question is there any way that you could maybe engage with the speaker, or have, staff who are working specifically on this engage with the speaker? And right now there are ways that you'll bring back updates on the implementation of bylaws to council. Is that something that you would ordinarily do anyways, in hearing from people who had concerns?
Over to staff. City Manager.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I didn't fully catch the question. Would you mind repeating it, Councillor?
Just would there be updates? Would there be updates on the implementation of this bylaw if it passes? Regular updates to council, especially in regard to the impacts on the affected local business.
And would you be able to engage with the speaker, like as in the community of businesses or people that sold bear bangers for the reasons that were mentioned before?
Yeah, Catherine Holm is on the phone. I don't know, Catherine, if you want to jump in. I think we can definitely continue to engage with stakeholders, and we can definitely continue to update council. Catherine, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'd concur on that. We, as directed by council, we came back fairly quickly with this, but we will continue our consultation and engagement with the retailers impacted.
Is that okay?
That answers my question, so I won't be supporting this amendment, knowing that staff are already able to do that.
Thanks very much. Councillor Kirby-Young, please go ahead, up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I actually agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Fry on this one, because I think that the nature of how they are being used really speaks to the logic that simply telling people not to set them off or prohibiting the discharge of them when you're not making it more difficult to access the supply is not going to be effective in this case. I also did some review and reading on this one, and it was interesting to note that bear banger use is already prohibited in national parks across the country. It's not prohibited in BC parks yet, but BC Conservation Services does not recommend the use of them, and in fact they recommend bear spray and noise and other tools. And they have commented in looking at the impact on wildlife and that, and also in terms of the efficacy of protection for people that are using them, that bangers could make bears more aggressive, as they could be scared of the noise, depending upon the trajectory of where they are set off, where humans end up in relation to bears, or bears and cubs. So it's fairly interesting to sort of see that in terms of a lot of those areas already in sort of formally designated parks, that there's a strong recommendation not to use them, or they're actually prohibited. I also look at some of the calls in terms of how they've been used, and I know Councillor Bly referenced the situation last night at the Howard Johnson, and I think that one area has become a hot spot, and police have commented that if they know there's a particular area, it's certainly easier to monitor behavior, but that is probably the exception and not the norm, and it's very difficult to catch somebody setting off bear bombers. And I look at some of the incidents that have happened already in Vancouver in the last few months from a public safety perspective. There was an incident where it required cordoning off an area in downtown Vancouver and bringing in a bomb specialist, which is a large safety concern. There was an incident where there was a child stuffed animal that was found with a sort of rigged IED, incendiary explosive device, that was strapped to it in a downtown park. As well. And so I think the fact that they're being rigged with ball bearings and used as IEDs is really troublesome from a safety perspective. But I also think we have to recognize our urban environment, and lots and lots of feedback that I've received from people, particularly in the Gastown, downtown East Side, Strathcona, crosstown neighborhoods, that simply it's really impacting their quality of life and ability to sleep. These things are going off consistently. It's disturbing, it's scary from people that have post-traumatic stress disorder that it triggers. People with young babies have heard from those who've exhibited concern. So I think recognizing when we live in an increasingly noisy environment, these can be disturbing at best in terms of quality of life, but they can also be a safety hazard. And when I was interested to read, but I was really quite convinced when I read the recommendation from Wildlife Services in terms of both protection of people, but also sensitivity to wildlife. So for that reason, I'm not going to be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bly, you have about 2 minutes, 45 seconds left.
Yeah, I could see that. Thank you. I actually have a point of information through you to the city manager, if I may. The point of information is
Sure, yes, please go ahead.
If there was an amendment that, rather than striking B, enabled, so if there was an amendment that basically directed staff to work with responsible retailers to create some sort of permitting system in addition or in conjunction with approving in principle that we ban the sale, how do they work together? Anticipating maybe an amendment to this amendment to make it more agreeable to work with both the banning, but also working with retailers to create a permitting system. And I just want to note, no, I won't note. I'll just ask for that answer. Thank you.
City Manager.
Thanks. Yeah, just so I understand, are you asking if we could do both?
Exactly.
Ban them and work with
yeah.
vendors on a permitting system? Is that?
That's right.
Yeah, I'm not sure how maybe the Deputy City Manager, Paul Mokry or Catherine can weigh in. I don't quite see how we would both ban them and work with individuals that sell them on a permitting system, because if we're banning their sale, then they're not authorized to do that.
Okay.
I kind of get the impression, it's one or the other. Like either they're banned or there's a permitting system.
Okay, that's fine. Well, actually, I appreciate that. So my final 45 seconds, I'm just going to comment that I agree completely with how disruptive these are. That's not arguable at all, and very concerning for families and all of those that are triggered by these. I guess what I'm trying to reconcile is bear spray is a perfect example of where the permitting system came in, and we still see people setting off bear spray downtown and in areas not at the same rate right now as bear bangers. So there's a permitting system that came in, and you see what have you. You can go get the training how to use them, so they're controlled first rather than an outright ban. So I'm just trying to see if there's some middle ground, but I'll leave it there. I think we see an amendment on the way.
Thanks so much. Councillor Carr, the 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Unmute. There you
Sorry,
go. Okay.
I am on mute, and I am just working with a with an amendment. I've sent one in, but I actually am in the process of changing it based on the response to by City Manager to Councillor Blythe's questions. So I'm sorry, but I need a moment, and if anyone else gets on the list, I'll have this done in about 1 minute. But meanwhile, I am sorry. Yeah, I've got to work on the wording of one last section here. So. Oh, thank you, Councillor Fry. I'll take myself off the list and get back on.
Thanks. Councillor Fry, you have 2 minutes.
Sorry, my mute system.
Yeah,
and I just, reflecting on all this, I do want to highlight that there is some serious concerns around the efficacy of bear bangers as a tool for the backcountry, and we've seen from the report and from subsequent reading that I've done that they can literally backfire on folks and create a more dangerous situation. So I don't necessarily believe that bear bangers as a tool are the be all end all, but I can certainly respect that and acknowledge that they do give peace of mind. But as Councillor Kirby Young alluded to in her comments, a bear banger IED strapped to a children's toy in a public park, that is an absolute deal breaker for me. I don't see any way, shape, or form that we can just let this go and go with a kind of weak pass on actually developing some really cogent and serious bylaw additions that reflect the seriousness of what that might actually look like if a child happened to be injured by, or worse, by a bear banger IED on a stuffed toy. I certainly couldn't live with myself knowing that we didn't go through with this. So I think that I've seen sort of the gist of Councillor Carr's amendment that's forthcoming, and I think that that's a thoughtful kind of perspective that really does respect the sort of professional and industry use of bear bangers for folks who are working or traveling in the backcountry and do legitimately need them. But there is obviously no space for bear bangers in the city of Vancouver. There's no bears in the city of Vancouver, except for that one time that we saw a bear on the top of the bump here that rode in on Cambie Street, but that was a hilarious story. So I do think that this is really where we need to go with it, and I hope that Councillor Carr's had enough time to fix her amendment as I've been speaking. Thank you for the time.
Thanks, Councillor Fry. Just before I move to Councillor Carr, just so Council is aware that as it's currently worded, Councillor Swanson's motion would mean we would not move. This is a bylaw consideration, remember? So it mean we would be not moving forward with the bylaw that would do the changes. So just so you're aware of that, Councillor Carr, please go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Fry. So I did submit an amendment, but then I updated it, and you'll have the most recent one in front of you, clerks. I'm hoping that you have received that. But basically, my amendment completely strikes Councillor Swanson's amendment and replaces it with language that adds that staff consult with appropriate stakeholders and consider incorporating into the amendments arising from the recommendations a permitting system for the sale of bear bangers to professionals who use bear bangers as part of their jobs, such as guides and outfitters, professional scientists, search and rescue teams. And I note that in response to the answer to Councillor Blythe's question to the city manager, that he said he didn't think that they were that it would be compatible to do that. But I'm looking. I took some time to review the language, and in B, it does say that council approved in principle. So I will interpret that to say that in principle means that generally there will be a ban to the larger public. And the one exception would be after staff consult with stakeholders, the possibility of incorporating into that incorporating into the bylaw changes some exception for professionals if they so decide after that consultation. So I'm hoping that that covers off the concerns that council has raised and that the speaker raised.
Just before I call for a second, I have a question to the clerk because we've been having a bit of discussion back and forth. Clerk, I'm wondering if you can clarify whether this amendment would, in fact, nullify moving forward with the ban. I think that's important information for council to know before we move ahead. Are you, as a city manager, able to provide information regarding the impact of this amendment on the motion as it stands?
It's the clerk here, Mayor Stewart. I would need a few moments to consult on that and get back to you.
Okay, thanks, Council. I'm going to take just a short break for the clerk to do that consultation because I do think it's pretty core, so we stay focused on what the issue here is at hand and we don't inadvertently disrupt that. So I'll just, can we take 5 minutes to 10:07 and then I'll call us back then. Thanks very much. back to you. So legal counsel has said that this amendment would not affect the original motion in terms of dealing, but that we should make sure today that we're clear that we want the ban to proceed as recommended. And this is so I guess what is our intention? Is it to hold the ban or is it to go ahead with the ban? And I think that's the key thing that we need to make clear to staff so they can operate effectively. And right. So why don't we just proceed with that information that we have to make clear in our decision today whether or not we want to move ahead with the ban as outlined in the bylaws that are drafted, or do we want to hold that and proceed with this motion? So,
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
City Manager here. Can I jump in real quick?
Please do.
And just so we're want to make sure we're communicating clearly to you. Councillor Swanson's motion is to remove the ban. As the way that we're reading it is that Councillor Carr's amendment is to strike out the removal of the ban and to add the registry component. So council could effectively do the ban and concurrently give us direction to develop a registry component. And earlier I was asked if we can do both, and I believe that this is viable. You could effectively enact the ban, and then we can go and work to create a registry system for professionals and others so that they could continue to use them. So I think I just want to make sure I was clear earlier. I do think this approach is viable.
Okay, thank you very much, City Manager. And so I'll call for a seconder for this motion.
Second.
Right. Second, Councillor DiGenova.
Okay, thank you. I'll move us to our amendment queue then, the second amendment queue. So if you'd like to speak to this, please put yourself on. Councillor DiGenova, please go ahead. Up to 5 minutes.
Thanks very much. Mr. Mayor, point of information to staff, just to clarify.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Johnston, I understand that in the point of information I'd asked before about was an amendment needed to direct staff to kind of speak with the community that had concerns that there wouldn't be proper access to these tools for the appropriate uses that they were developed for. And I understood you said yes. If we're looking at registry, I mean, that seems to me like it's almost like a whole other motion, because you're telling me that this amendment would still move forward with the ban, but it would send staff out to do a whole bunch more work. Is that correct?
Well, I think the way that I'm interpreting it, and clerk, feel free to jump in if I'm misstating it here, is that this would direct approve the ban. And concurrently ask us to go back to the stakeholders in the community that we heard from or that have an interest in this and work to create a permit system. And so that is most certainly aligned with the direction that we've already gotten. But yes, it would be additional work.
Okay, and I know this is maybe a silly question, Mr. City Manager, but would you expect that this would be quite a bit of work? I understand that right now, as you had just asked Ms. Holmes to answer one of my questions, the Chief License Officer has everything from cannabis to liquor to deal with, to permitting, for liquor primaries, to bans and enforcement. So I'm just wondering how realistic this is with the current workload as to when this would come back, just for transparency.
Yeah, thanks. The group that's working on this is very, very strained, as I've said a good number of times. So I definitely recognize that, the point you're making, it's definitely a very challenging time. This group's got a lot on their plates, particularly as it relates to COVID. I don't, given that this has just come up, I don't have a sense of a timeline on this. I think if we're directed to do it, we can consult internally and send a note to council with a kind of a proposed timeline.
Okay. Thank you very much. I understand this is a strike and replace to the amendment, and I prefer this to the original amendment, so I'll support this. As to whether or not I will be able to support the amendment moving forward, I'm going to consider and listen to my fellow colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dejanova. I'll just remind Council that we have just an hour and 15 minutes left in schedule for this Council meeting. We're supposed to be done at 11:30 today, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4 councillors on this amendment to the amendment queue. So I am just conscious of trying to get through our business because we have so much to do over the next few days. Again, you fully have your rights, but I just want to draw that to your attention. Councillor Kirby-Young, up to 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Cutting to the chase here in terms of time, I'm just wondering, people would still be permitted to purchase them online, and it strikes me that professionals would probably be, fully capable of purchasing them online. And I'm just wondering, given the comments around the amount of staff work and other priorities that the city has, if we could just go with the common sense approach and just recognize that these individuals would still have the ability to purchase them online or in other municipalities, and rather than us, the City of Vancouver, taking on all of this work to develop a permitting system that's unique to us. So that's the point of information. Is that just an opportunity? Because they're not precluded from purchasing them. They could still just do that online, isn't that right? Without us having to go through a whole bunch of work here.
City Manager.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's my understanding that these can be purchased online. So I think probably that's an accurate statement that folks that are in the business could likely have different ways of purchasing them.
Okay, so based on, and thank you for that, and based on that, just in the interest of speed and efficiency, I am very conscious of the amount of work that we're putting on staff and just relative priorities, and if there's a mechanism for folks to get them, I was inclined to support the amendment in the spirit of it, but if it did not preclude enacting the bylaw today, which I'm hearing from staff that no, it doesn't, but I'm just thinking that maybe we just need to take this simple approach here and just recognize that there's other ways for folks to get these that need to get them, that may be using them professionally, and given the fact that they are prohibited in a lot of parks, and I think that we're going to see more regulation coming to BC parks for that nature, I'd rather see it coming from the other levels of government and let them take the lead on where they're used than Vancouver spending a whole bunch of time on this. So I'm thinking I'm inclined to just leave them with the online option and not have to have Vancouver go through all the work and the expense. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Swanson.
Yeah, I support the amendment. I just want to be clear that I don't think that bear bangers should be allowed to be set off in the city, and I think it's good to prohibit that. But I also think people who need them should have access to them. So I support the amendment. Thank you, Councillor Carr.
Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And just a point of information for you to staff. Just a couple of really quick questions, I hope. One is just with respect to this amendment, if this amendment's passed, then and council adopts the recommendations for staff, would this still include then a ban on the sale within retailers in the city?
Mr. Mayor,
yeah, please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, that's our understanding. Yes.
Okay.
The way that we are interpreting this, as I said a couple minutes ago, is that the ban would the bylaw that you have before you today would come into effect. They would not be permitted to be sold, and then we would go off and start to develop a permit system.
Okay. And when we talk about the ban of sale, we're only talking bricks and mortar retailers. It does not include online, just to be really clear. So the same retailers could sell online. Deacon, others, MEC.
That's my understanding. Is that and maybe Catherine Holm could speak to that.
Yeah, certainly. So as a Vancouver-based business, if they are selling the devices, they would be in violation of the bylaw if they continue to sell.
So they couldn't sell online then?
That's correct.
That's an interesting nuance. And then my other question is just on the subject of the permitting. I'm just curious, when I hear permitting, I think a permitting system that includes extra fees on top. And I'm just curious if we could adopt a system of having retailers log the sales and they be subject to audit versus a permitting system. I don't know. I guess I probably have some assumptions about what that means and what it could look like, and that it has added costs for both the retailers and for the individuals or companies purchasing, and a lot of administrative work. But if it was just a requirement that those retailers log the sales, and then that they are subject to periodic audit, I'm just curious if that's a model that could be used.
Mr. Mayor, did you?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. I think we, as from the staff perspective, we'd be prepared to pursue that. I think we came in today with a recommend based on the concerns that we've heard, and I'm sure you've seen all the emails. I mean, kids that can't sleep and a lot of just really troubling impacts that these are having. We came in with the recommendation based on council's direction to ban the sale, and that's as we explored with VPD and heard about the ways that these were being manipulated. We are recommending that they be banned for the sale and use. If council directs us to pursue a registry, we would definitely be prepared to do that. We would also be prepared to develop a permit system. I think, we can pursue both of those and come back with a recommendation. And we could explore how to enable professionals to continue to have access to them, and come back with some ideas of how best to do that. So we're open. We're looking for direction at this point on how council would like us to proceed.
Okay, thank you. I guess my question would be then, because there seems to be a lot of conversation centered on this today, is whether, it could be, if council were to adopt this report as it is to have an evaluation or have staff report back in 6 months or to a year about how it's working, and get some sense from the retailers and others, and if that's just another option, I suppose. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carr, up to 5 minutes on the amendment to the amendment.
Yes, thank you. Just to be clear with all of council, I support the ban and the proceeding with the bylaws as prepared by staff. That's why I struck the amendment by Councillor Swanson. So we're back to what the original motion has as recommendations. And my point in wanting to see the exploration, staff explore with the stakeholders incorporating amendments to it would be at some point, hopefully not in the too distant future, staff would come back and say, okay, we've done this work and we're going to be amending the bylaws we just amended today, and allow a permitting system for sale to professionals, where professionals, for example, would have to show their credentials in order to purchase the beer bangers. And the reason why I think it's important is I am so worried about the fate of our bricks and mortar stores in Vancouver, and something like Deakin Industries, which has been around for decades, and Vancouver having been a place where many people who work in the backcountry come here, they get their supplies, they get a lot of supplies. Beer bangers are just one piece of them, but these are professionals that go out there, and I want to see these stores survive. So that's why I'm putting it forward.
Thank you. Councillor Bly, up to 5 minutes.
Oh, Councillor Carr just took the words right out of my mouth. Just to focus on not necessarily just people who need to acquire these, but also those that sell these and specialized retailers. So I support the amendment. I hope it passes.
Thanks very much. So we have nobody else on the queue, so we'll vote on the amendment to the amendment. Councillor Dejanova?
I need a
yes.
vote assist. Yes. And as I said, I'll vote in favor of the amendment.
Okay. Please go ahead. Clerks, and do that. Yep. So clerks, sorry, council, we have that amendment to the amendment passes with Councillor Kirby-Young in opposition. And we're going to go back to the amendment queue. Councillor Carr, do you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Kirby-Young, anything else? You have just under 2 minutes.
No, I'm just happy to support. I appreciate the staff bringing back the report quickly, and I'm happy to support the recommendations. And just for clarity, because there is still options to purchase online, may not be from a Vancouver-specific store, but I'm very, I sort of weight the Council of BC Conservation Services, and in terms of wildlife support and protection, fairly heavily, and the fact that these are not recommended, and so for that reason, that's why I'm not supporting D. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dejanova, I just have 30 seconds.
Did I understand that would be severed, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. I'd like to sever. Thank you.
Thanks. And Mr. Mayor, I moved the motion. I don't think I'll take it much more than 30 seconds, just to say that I'm a bit uncomfortable with where
we're still in the we're just still in the amendment queue.
Sorry, the amendment. Yeah. So I'm also concerned, and I'm happy it's being severed. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll just clear this. And so, Councillor Bly, you have 3 minutes to talk to the amended motion.
I know I'll be in support of the amended motion. Appreciate staff bringing the recommendations back.
Thanks very much, Councillor Fry.
Pardon the interruption, Mayor Stewart. Yep. We haven't voted yet on Councillor Carr's amendment, so we should be in Amendment Q1.
I'm sorry about that. I'll move us back there. I don't see any other speakers, so we're going to vote on the amended amendment. So the original amendment was Councillor Swanson's amendment, and then it was a strike on replaced by Councillor Carr, which we approved. Councillor Dejanova, do you need to vote assist?
I do, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be a no. So in opposition.
Thanks so much. That has passed with Councillor Kirby-Young, Hardwick, and Dejanova in opposition. I do hear some noise in the background, so if you could make sure that you're muted. It's quite noisy there, so make sure you're muted. Thank you. Okay, we're back on the main queue. Councillor Fry, have up to 5 minutes.
Sorry, Mayor, I think that's a holdover. I support this motion as amended.
Thanks very much, Councillor Dejanova. You have 3 minutes left.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. I was hoping that we could sever out the amended part of the motion.
Right, and I'll get the clerks to make sure that's up on screen. Emily, just look, I'll stop your timer here. If I look at the, I'll just wait for the clerks to get this up on screen.
And just to close on this, I would like to thank staff. I know that this was a very quick turnaround time, considering all that our licensing and permit staff currently have on their plates. And really thank Ms. Holm and your staff for all of your work on this. I know that this goes beyond an annoyance to some people, and bear bangers truly can be traumatizing for the reasons mentioned before. I think there are people who face difficulties, and it's not just a few minutes, and they'll be okay. But I just wanted to say that I really do support the ban, and I also support those who use these devices in the backcountry. And right now, my big concern is that we can't find a way to distinguish between the two, and I'm not sure that that's something that retailers want put on them. So I'm glad that staff will be. I understand it's just to consider and consult is the language that I saw that Councillor Carr had put forward. So that's what we're going to be doing, but we will be moving forward with the ban. So I will be supporting this. And if I may, just for a point of information, it is consider and consult regarding the registry. That is the language that is now has been voted in through the amendment. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I can read it to you. Section D, that staff consult with appropriate stakeholders and consider incorporating into the amendments arising from these recommendations a permitting system.
There's no time frame on that, Mr. Mayor, so I don't need that severed. I can support that as well. Again, it was just for the reason that I know that staff have a lot of work on their plates, and each time we put more on, but we still expect them to deliver at the clip and the pace that we have prescribed in some of our earlier recommendations or motions or directions to them. But again, there's no timeline on this, so I know that the enactment will go through, and very happy to support this. So do not need to sever voting in favor of all.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Kirby-Young, you'd asked for a severance. Do you still want it severed?
Yes, please. I'd like to sever D.
Sever D. Okay, so Council, do you have anything else to say, Councillor Kirby-Young? We have,
nope,
about a minute and a half. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, we've got, just looking at this then, clerks, the first vote would be A, B, and C would be lumped as one vote, and so I will call that, and then we'll vote on D separately. Sorry, Council, just pulling up my screen here. Councillor Fry. Okay, that's unanimous, Council. Thanks very much. And to make sure, just remind the clerks to make sure those are all up on screen. There it is. Okay, thank you. And we'll move to vote on D. Just waiting for Councillor Swanson and Councillor Dejanova. You need a vote assist.
I voted, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks very much. That has passed with Councillor Harwick and Councillor Kirby-Young in opposition. So thanks very much, Council. We have made it through that item, and we are moving on. So we have Report 6, the annual inflation rate adjustment to development contributions. And I'm just sorry, I'm trying to remember who held that one. I have a list here. Let me just look.
Mayor Stewart, yes. It's the clerk here. It was held by Councillor Dominato.
Right, just looking at that now. Sure. So, Councillor Dominato, I'll put you on the queue first to. It's going to clear. Councillor Swanson, do you have questions on this? Councillor Swanson, do you have a question on this report?
No.
Okay, great. I'm just clearing the queue here. Councillor Bly, do you have questions on this?
No.
Councillor Fry? Councillor Fry, do you have questions on this?
Sorry, not at this moment. I'm shifting gears into this report. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I see Councillor Weeb on the queue, but Councillor Weeb, I'm going to put Councillor Dejanova on, or Dominato on, followed by put Councillor Weeb, and then I'm sensing that Councillor Dejanova would like to be on as well. So, Councillor Dominato, please go ahead. Up to 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. You know, I pulled this report because I had asked some questions of staff, and at the time I didn't have them when we were going through the agenda the other day. I've since received those questions. I believe they were circulated to the council as well. And so I do not have any further questions on this.
Okay. Thanks so much. Councillor Weeb, questions?
Yeah, question to staff. Recognizing that we're predicting a reduction in DCLs to the city, which is changing our budget outlook, I'm wondering why the inflationary adjustments are decreasing on a lot of the categories, recognizing the need for us to be able to deliver the amenities and ensure that growth is helping to pay for those growth in needed DCL utilities and services.
Over to the staff.
Thanks,
yep.
Thanks Council. I'll have the planning staff jump in.
Okay.
Mayor and Council, it's Chris Clibben from the Planning Department. Trust you can hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
To Councillor Weeb's question, the inflationary adjustment system is an annual system that's been in place since 2009. The development industry is fully supportive of this system because it adjusts rates annually for the latest changes in property and construction inflation. Since 2010, rates have been adjusted to the tune of about 5% per year on an upwards cycle.
This is the first year rates have decreased, and marginally, it's 0.8% of a decrease, but it reflects what's happening in the market. Property inflation, according to BC Assessment, year over year, it's a minus 8.9% decrease in property costs, and a marginal increase in construction costs. Those are blended together based on what we intend on delivering through the current capital plan in terms of land and construction activity, and it reflects a 0.8% decrease in both CACs and DCL fixed rates. And it makes sense because it reflects lower costs for the city when we go out and buy land and build stuff through construction. So it is in tune with the capital plan and the cost to deliver those amenities.
So the cost for us to do land acquisition, childcare, is considered to have gone down for our budget. Is that what you're stating? That
So it's important
our cost
to note here that
our cost as a city to deliver amenities has gone down relative to what the budget was for last year.
It's important to note that the DCL system is, the rates are extensive and they're applied across 4 eligible receiving categories. We already collect extensive DCL revenues that go towards childcare, for example. Every year we do adjust those rates marginally to keep in line with property inflation. And what we're finding based on last year compared to this year, there was a drop in property costs, which is driving the marginal decrease in DCL rates. Now next year, we don't know what's going to happen. It could be that this flips the other way as the market recovers. It could be that then DCLs actually go the other way and there's actually an increase next year. But this is the system that Council has adopted. It's a system that goes up or down depending on what the annual inflationary changes are in the market. We do ongoing monitoring of the system to ensure that the rates are in tune with what's happening in the market. And based on the economic conditions that are happening in the market, particularly in light of the pandemic, we feel that the inflationary index is pointing in the right direction.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Dejanova, up to 5 minutes.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was ready to move the motion, but I see Councillor Boyle's on the queue, so happy to go after her if she'd like.
She's off the queue now. So.
Okay. I also was just there to move it, so
okay, great.
I'm happy to second it.
Yeah, happy to move this forward, Mr. Mayor, and thank staff, and actually notice the inflationary rate going down. That being said, this is about inflation. It's about the cost and of delivering this in our communities. If we want to talk about a flat rate CAC and just to some of the earlier conversations and questions, I mean, that's something that I had long advocated for on City Council. I'm not sure, maybe the City Manager can remind me as to how many motions I'd put forward on flat rate CACs, but just so that there were expectations and understanding of that. I know that the Canby Corridor, we saw that, but with inflation, it simply is that. It's inflation, and I also just wanted to say I wasn't quite sure if this, it's the one question that was kind of left, I suppose, for me, and don't need to necessarily ask it, but I'll assume that, I mean, this also speaks to some of the metrics and the efficiencies and being able to move forward in a more digital way and being able to be, quicker and more nimble to expedite services. And as we do that, sometimes we can see the cost of those actual services go down. And I really just wanted to thank staff for bringing this forward. I actually was quite impressed reading the report as to what was being suggested, because it seems that, we hear often from the development industry, and that includes the nonprofit sectors, that costs are going up. So I think that, when we look at inflation, it's based on data, it's based on metrics. And when we talk about inflation, not increase, not decrease, but inflation, that's what it is. And I'm happy to see this. So happy to move this forward and support it. And again, I wasn't going to hold the report for those questions. but now that we're here, just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you, Councillor DeGenova. I've a mover and a seconder. So if anybody wants to add anything further, please add yourself to the queue. Otherwise, I'll call a vote on this one. I don't see anybody on the queue, so I'll call a vote. Please vote on screen. Councillor DeGenova. There we go. That's unanimous. Thank you, Council. On to our next item, the referral report for rezoning on West 41st Avenue and Willow Street, Oak Ridge Transit Center. Councillor Swanson held this report for questions to staff. Councillor Swanson, just a reminder, this is it's a fairly narrow decision we're making here. This is whether or not to refer this to public hearing. So, you know, that's what you should concentrate on, is whether or not we should refer this to public hearing. So thanks very much, and we'll go ahead with 5 minutes.
Yeah, we have all kinds of motions on increased housing affordability, core needs. They're all in the works for report backs. We have all kinds in the works on equity. And this is a project that's going to take 10 years, but only 6% of the units are at Hills, and there's none for low income. So I've just submitted a motion to refer this back to staff now and ask them to work for more housing affordability so that we won't be creating another upper income neighborhood.
Okay, Councillor Swanson, so this has not yet been moved. This is a question section, so once it has been moved, you could submit an amendment for consideration. But this section is for questions to staff.
Happy to move the motion, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Kirby.
I do have a couple of speakers on the. So, Councillor Swanson, do you have any questions for staff? I do hear I hear some typing in the background, so if you can make sure to mute whoever there is doing that. Councillor Swanson, do you have any questions for staff?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Councillor DeGenova, questions for staff?
Nope, I was happy to move the motion, so I'll go on after Councillor Kirby-Young. She has questions.
Councillor Kirby, I don't know. People are dancing around on the screen here. I've got, so no questions. Councillor Kirby-Young, any questions?
Yeah, a point of information through you to staff, if I can.
Sure.
And
okay.
that is that my understanding is that in reading through the rationale for this particular report and the referral and the change to what has previously been approved is, and correct me if I'm wrong, so just fact checking here, is an attempt to have more certainty around early delivery of the social housing units by containing them together versus them being distributed in multiple parcels across the site. And given the challenges in the economy, realizing that that could drag over a number of years. But is that the rationale in terms of this request and this referral report, to deliver the social housing units with more certainty and earlier?
Mr. Mayor, did you want staff?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead, City Manager.
Great. Maybe I'll ask Kirsten Robinson from the planning staff to jump in.
Certainly. We would be happy to bring additional information as to the rationale for the consolidation of the social housing on a single site to the referral public hearing date if Council chooses to refer this item.
If that information is alluded to in the report, follow-up question, is there a reason why that can't be affirmed now, just in terms of facts, if it's, so Council can consider this to refer or not to refer decision?
That item is more substantial to the conversation for the public hearing. The rationale is to consolidate is not related to a change. The policy statement for the OTC site identified a 20% requirement, but didn't specify sites where it needed to be located. There were some changes through the process to establish a recommendation that a consolidated site was the preferred approach.
Okay. What I'm hearing is that we don't want to delve into this. It's a high level, but not potentially addressing all the points I'm hearing. We don't want to address that in detail until the public hearing. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have a point of information through you to staff as well, given that we have a motion to refer the staff to, I think it was to deepen affordability. I don't have the language in front of me. I guess I'm looking for some clarification if council were to support that report back. Would that be undertaken, or is that something that could be, if it's referred to public hearing, that could still be additional sort of deepened, could be contemplated even if this is referred to public hearing? I guess I'm looking for some procedural guidance here without getting into the public hearing realm.
My understanding, Councillor Dominato, is that if this is referred to public hearing as directed in this referral report, then we'd have the full range of options available to us at that public hearing once we've heard from the public, which could be any range of things, but approving it, saying no, or additional referral back to staff for extra information, or even deeper things. Is that correct, City Manager? Would you say in that categorization?
Yeah, maybe I'll have Kirsten jump in on that from planning.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This is Teresa O'Donnell, Deputy Director. Yes, Mayor, that is correct. The deliberation regarding the levels of affordability is properly considered by Council at the public hearing. Does that help?
Yeah, from my perspective, Councillor Dominato, is that helpful?
Yeah, I think so. I just looked back at the motion. It's about housing affordability. So it could be contemplated as part of a public hearing if council wants to see more than 300 units of social housing. That could be contemplated.
Right, I think, in fact, should be probably. So.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Dejanova?
I'm prepared to move the motion.
Or
I'm prepared to move the staff recommendations for referral. Mr.
Okay.
Mayor?
I do have Councillor Swanson on the list for questions. Would you be willing to cede for her questions?
As long as, Mr. Mayor, I suppose it's a point of information to you, but sometimes we've had this before and then a councillor has moved. Oh, I see the Councillor Swanson is off the queue.
Yep.
So I'm happy to move the motion, or the recommendations as they are. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for that? Seconder for
Councillor Kirby-Young.
Okay, thank you. I'm moving us over to the main queue. I have Councillor Bly on the queue. That might be a holdover, I think. Councillor Bly?
That is a holdover.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Swanson, you're on the queue, up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, I've submitted an amendment.
Okay, thank you. And we'll just let the clerks pull it up.
So Mayor Stewart, pardon the interruption. It is the clerk here. We have not received the amendment. If it could be re-forwarded.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Swanson, we do need this one in writing, so.
I did send it, I saw it.
You still have time on your... You still have 4.5 minutes, so.
Huh.
Any luck here, Councillor Swanson?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just to explain a little bit, you said that the full range of options will be available at the public hearing, but actually what this report says is it has one option, and that option boils down to about 6% of the housing being at Hills and nothing for low income. So what I'm trying to get at with this amendment is that kind of range of housing affordability is not within our equity targets. It's creating more disparity in the city, not less. And I think it would be good it would even be good for the developer to go back now rather than to have it be defeated at public hearing to try and get more affordability so that we don't have yet another planned exclusive neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Councillor Swanson?
No.
Okay, do we have a seconder for this motion?
Fry.
Councillor Fry, thanks very much. So I've moved us to an amendment queue. Councillor Fry, go ahead, up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, only that I'm happy to second and support this amendment. I think, you know, what we've seen from some of the work on the Oak Ridge Center is that for a transit-oriented development site, we're really not reaching a lot of the targets that we need to reach. And from some of this council's experience with public hearings and coming back with the reality that for us to substantially change the report once we've received it and heard from the public requires time and another public hearing, and I don't think that's in anybody's interest. I think that the will of this council is being captured in Councillor Swanson's amendment insofar as I think we're all eager to see more truly affordable housing for Vancouverites, and in particular for people on the moderate income scale. So I do appreciate that there are some targets established in this report as it is, but I think that to Councillor Swanson's amendment, we can always do better, and I certainly would like to see that in a public hearing referral report coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Just before we proceed to Councillor Dejanova, I just want to ask staff what, just again, the impacts of this decision are. If we do refer this back for, just so council is clear what they're voting on, if we do pass Councillor Swanson's motion, City Manager, what does this do to the process, and perhaps any estimates of, if this does pass, you know, what are the potential changes that would come and when we might see them?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Maybe I'll have Teresa O'Donnell or the planning team jump in as well, but from my understanding, the team have been working on this project, or the applicant have been, for a very, very long time. And each of these projects are a fine balance to try to manage the pro forma, and we, of course, look at the pro forma and try to get as much affordability as we can out of it. So I imagine this would result in considerable delays in the project moving forward, but maybe I'll ask the planning staff to weigh in on that.
Thank you very much. It's Kirsten Robinson. We've been working on this application for about a year and a half at this point. It complies with the Oak Ridge Transit Center policy statement, which was completed prior to that work. If council chooses not to refer this item, then we would have to go back and work with the developer to change the housing mix and reconsult. It would take us a considerable amount of time, 6 months to 9 months probably.
Okay, thanks so much. Councillor Dejanova, go ahead, up to 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just wondered if we didn't refer this to public hearing, and I suppose this is a point of information for you. If we didn't refer this to public hearing, which is asking staff, we're referring it back to staff, don't we essentially do that by not referring it forward? So by voting no to what is proposed, we kind of refer it back to them anyways. Is that correct?
I'm not sure, perhaps, and this is a good question, I think, just to understand what we're voting on. Would staff be able to help us with that?
I should know this by now. Thank you.
Could staff answer that? Is referring it back the same as voting no, or is there differences?
Maybe I'll take a stab at that, Mr. Mayor, and I'll ask the planning staff to correct me if I misstate it. I think if you decline it, it would need to come back as a new project, and we would likely have a year before we brought it back. I think if it's referred, we could go back and have conversations with the applicant If they're prepared to do more, we can come back sooner, or if they say they aren't, we can come back sooner. So I think there's a difference between returning it back to staff and just turning it down. So maybe I'll ask.
Can I ask another point of information?
Clarify.
Oh, sorry.
Is that correct, planning team?
Yes, sir. That would be our interpretation of it.
Thanks. Councillor Days, I have another point of information.
Yes, thanks so much. Just to Mr. Johnston, I seem to I'm feeling a bit of deja vu here with Little Mountain and thinking about housing affordability and in the efforts to try and make housing as affordable as possible, and not pointing fingers at staff or council, just saying that housing, that some of it's just moving forward now. Is there a concern that in fact that this could go against what the mover of the amendment is looking for, which is deeper affordability if we don't move faster on the housing? If we were to hold this back for housing, that it might not move as fast.
Mr. Mayor, I can take the
Please do. Yep, go ahead.
Generally, we, as the staff, the team that's been working on this tries to get as much affordable housing out of it as we possibly can, and there's a lot of back and forth with the applicant. So I think it would be accurate to say that we've kind of done everything we can to get the affordable housing as high as we can. And so I'm not sure that us going to go back and try is going to get any more.
Okay. Well, I will not be supporting the amendment then. Thank you very much. That really helped me to make my mind up on this. Housing affordability is something that is deeply important, I know, to a number of councillors, and that includes me. That's why sometimes good intentions often lead to unintended consequences. And I think about, some of the things like, rezoning that was debated on Granville Street, looking at affordable housing in Little Mountain situation. So for that reason, for reasons of housing affordability and hearing from our staff, they have given this 100%, their best try. They didn't come here at 86%, 87% to not give it their full go. So I won't be supporting the amendment. I will be supporting the original referral.
Thank you. Councillor Carr?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I had supported the amendment, but I actually don't. After hearing the city manager's comments back, I'm going to just speak to, I'm not going to forward that amendment. I'm going to just speak in support of Councillor Swanson's amendment and then ask further questions and hopefully make sure that that some of the concerns I have around resilience and meeting climate emergency measures are incorporated. But I'll do that through questioning. For now, I'm just going to support Councillor Swanson's referral, because I really think we, especially in a large site like this, really need to up the ante in terms of achieving greater affordability. We will never achieve the kind of levels of affordable housing that are needed to actually deal with the housing crisis in the city.
Thank you. Councillor Dominato?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I have a point of information through you to the city manager. It would actually go along those same lines as your question, because my mind is turning to how much time and when. And here's the question I have, and I want to be really pointed because I'm quite sympathetic to the considerations that Councillor Swanson's raised. If we were to amend it to have a report back to council in a memo by a certain time frame, and I would appreciate the city manager identifying an appropriate time frame, would it be possible to do that, have those, as he said, those conversations with the applicant about the feasibility, as opposed to, I heard, potentially 6 to 9 months. I think that's extremely long, and I would not want to see this delayed by 9 months. However, I would appreciate us having a conversation to see if there is an opportunity to have further affordable housing as part of this. Is quite a large development, and so I'm wondering if that would be feasible, if we were to include a time frame for a report back in a memo, because I do think the conversation around housing affordability in the mix is important, but I don't want to hold it up. So I'm looking for some middle ground if someone can help me out.
Right. I'll refer it over to staff. But Councillor Dominato, once we have referred this to public hearing, I think that all information that's being considered by council has to be public. That would be a starting place as city manager. Anything else to add?
Well, I guess my sense, Mr. Mayor, would be that the public hearing is your chance to ask the applicant if they can do more on the affordable housing. It is the chance for them to present the project and for them to defend it, to talk about how much affordable housing they've been able to deliver and what the implications are of being able to deliver more or less. So, staff, as I said, for the last year and a half have been working on this project. I think we stand behind it. We think it's a very, very good project. We've pushed really hard on the affordable housing. And at this point, our recommendation would be to refer it to public hearing. And at that time, council has the opportunity to push the applicant, to ask them about this issue and the implications of doing more or less. I think they've been working hard to try to get to referral. And so my sense would be that at public hearing is the chance to have these public conversations with the applicant.
Thanks very much, Councillor Dominato. Anything else?
No, it's it.
Okay.
I may send an amendment in. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Up to just over 4 minutes.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. I'm wondering if I can ask an additional question of staff.
Sure.
I'm just trying to sort of wrap my head. The city manager mentioned a year and a half work on this, and I note that this report is dated June 10th. I'm curious how much of sort of new emergent stuff is really factored into this report. I'm thinking about obviously our capital plan recalibration from yesterday and some of the impacts on things from everything from One Water to new priorities as far as affordable housing and childcare. I'm thinking about the crisis and strata insurance. I'm thinking about mass timber construction changes in the building code. And of course, I'm thinking about just the general impacts of COVID-19 and how we view public space. And I'm wondering how much of these new emergent pieces are factoring into this plan that's a bit older now.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, shall I jump in?
Please do, yep.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very good line of questioning, and it really should be happening as a part of the public hearing process. And that's when the public can weigh in. That's when the applicant can speak to their thinking on these issues. So, my suggestion, Councillor Fry, would be to defer those questions to the public hearing to be able to really ask the applicant and have them defend the project in terms of how they've handled mass timber and various other components of the design.
Again, our decision here is: do we want to talk about the merits and demerits of this proposal or not? That is, do we want to hear this at public hearing or not? It's not to get into those issues here.
And with respect to that, I just don't want to put everybody through this rigmarole if the will of council and some of these emergent priorities aren't reflected in it, then we're kind of just it's not fair to the applicant. I don't think it's fair to folks speaking at the public hearing if there's room to improve this.
Sure.
So, but I appreciate the response, and it definitely weighs on my decision here. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I can just maybe to reiterate, as I was saying before, I mean, as the staff, that the team has worked with the applicant to bring the best project forward that we can with the most affordable housing that we can achieve, and I think many of the questions that you're asking would be very appropriate for the public hearing, and it's our recommendation. I think the planning team's recommendation that you hear it and have these questions at the time of the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bly. Up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm inclined to support this amendment, and I appreciate City Manager's comments, but I haven't felt we've actually had that flexibility when the decision comes at a public hearing to actually influence anything. And we saw that with the recent Birch Street project. And so I'm just I am concerned when I look at the numbers, 4% of 17 buildings will be at moderate income rental. And we declared, and we got 58 units out of 258. It's just really not meeting, I don't think, the housing needs that we have in the city. And
again, Councillor Bly, it's not about the content; it's whether the topic is. Do we want to discuss the details of the topic at the public hearing?
Well, I don't think we have an option, to be quite honest, in my experience. So I support the referral that Councillor Swanson put forward, because we get to discuss it at the public hearing, but we don't get to influence anything that I've seen so far at public hearings. Just being completely transparent and probably expressing a bit of frustration. So I'm supportive of the referral, and I see there might be an amendment that could help.
Yeah, well. And again, just to outline for council that, of course, all of this is guided by policy and bylaws that have been passed by us and previous councils, and so those are the constraints around these projects. And of course, we do have a range of options at public hearing, including, if you remember, the Granville hospice decision where that was rejected. So, I mean, the Birch Street decision could have been rejected or referred. So all those options are open during these public hearings. So just trying to remind you of the range of things that can be discussed and decided upon. So I hope you don't feel constrained in those, any councillors, because everything's still wide. It's just we're just trying to decide today whether this is a topic that we want to discuss in detail, based on and the basis of that discussion is this report coming forward by staff. Councillor Dominato.
Mr. Mayor, I've proposed an amendment because I wasn't offered up any suggested dates. So I've just proposed one for council's consideration, because I also want to be expeditious. I think that we want to be thoughtful of time. So I've added, with respect to Councillor Swanson's amendment, a report back to council with an update by August 31st, 2020, as to the feasibility if there can be additional housing affordability mix integrated here. I am like Councillor Bly. I struggle with. I think that at times I haven't seen a lot of opportunity to influence items that come to public hearing, and so I'd rather have this looked at further, but have it turned around if it's possible in a tight time frame, so that then if staff come back and say no, it's not possible, then they can put it back on an agenda in September for referral. If they say yes, actually it is, they could still bring it back for a referral. But I'm putting it on the table for discussion consideration.
Okay. I just want to check, because again, we're into just another territory, Councillor Dominato, whether or not this is in order. Because this is a quasi-legal process, I just want to make sure all our T's are crossed and I's are dotted. So I am going to check with the clerk and legal team to make sure this is something that would be in order. Thanks. I'll be right back with you. is out of order, as there are no council meetings in August. So I'm ruling this out of order. And moving on to Councillor Carr with 4 minutes remaining.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have sent in an amendment. I am going to table this amendment. I would have appreciated the date that had been established, but given that that's not the case, I still think that there should be a report. I think there should be changes to this report before we are able to consider it for referral. My amendment to Councillor Swanson's amendment is to add ensure plans include measures to achieve climate emergency targets. The reason I'm including that language is that at the time originally that we gave staff, council gave staff direction, it wasn't this term, it was a previous term. I had brought up the issues around climate emergency and said that, look, at the time that we had in the opportunity to have a whole planned community, very large site, we should be making sure that the orientation of buildings can accommodate solar access roofs, and be thinking about the way in which the whole community is planned. And I do not find at this point in the report we have in front of us that attention to those details is not specific enough. There are some details for sure around climate goals, but the report on page 16, for example, says...
Okay, Councillor Carr, look, yeah. I understand here, but I think we've strayed way off of what the decision is. It is not to discuss the content of the report. That is done. What we're deciding here is whether or not to discuss the content of the report. So, and we can only do that in the public hearing process. So that is what we're deciding here today.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that the way any of us vote on whether to refer a project to public hearing is to assess it against the current policies that the city has. And I am saying that I am not convinced that this report at this point in time addresses the current policies, in particular my amendment around climate emergency targets. Another point I would like to make around that is that we have climate emergency targets which say buildings are going to have to be zero emission buildings and long before 2050. And this only talks about low emission buildings. I would like attention paid to that in the details of this project.
So we have another amendment. I haven't seen the text of it yet. Councillor Carr, have you sent it into?
No, I sent it.
I just wait for it to get up on screen. Mr. Clerks, do you have that? Clerks are
yes, it's the clerk. Oops, sorry, Mayor Stewart. Pardon the interruption. We do not have the amendment.
I sent it at 11:21. Shall I send it again?
If it could be re-forwarded.
Point of privilege, Mr. Mayor. I believe it's because councillors are sending it to each other and not to the clerk's meeting. Email address.
I'm sorry. I just saw that is, you are exactly right. Sorry about that. I will forward it. Thank you.
Still have 30 seconds, Councillor Carr.
Just tell me what the address is. I'm sorry, it's not coming up here. Just what is the address I have to send it to? An amendment is not coming up. Sorry, just clerk, could you just give me your email address?
It could be sent to Tina Penny if you wish, but it's council meeting amendments.
I've just sent it for Councillor Carr, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Okay, clerk. So Councillor Carr is out of time, but if you could pull up the amendment. And if other councillors could mute.
Mayor Stewart, we just received it. We're just preparing it. If you could give us a moment.
Sure.
Point of parliamentary procedure.
Councillor Bly.
Just wondered if we needed to move a motion to extend past 11:30 to finish this item.
Yep, we need to. So if you have that.
Move that.
Give a second.
Second, Councillor DeGenova.
Sorry, the clerks clerks, I hear you there.
Yes, sorry for the interruption again, Mayor Stewart. Council can go until noon according to the procedure bylaw, but we would require, if you were going to go past noon, that's when we would require a motion.
Okay. Thanks very much. Great. And so we don't need a motion at the moment, and I'll just let council know as we're going. Yes, Councillor DeGenova.
Mr. Mayor, this meeting was scheduled 11:30 a.m. and I would hope that that would be respected. And for that reason, I would hope that we would just finish this item. I'm happy to stay over to finish this item, but to finish all of the items of business, I know that we have many reserved dates, but that would be my hope. And just on a point of privilege, I'm not sure that I would be able to attend past this point.
Okay, but again, just following the procedural bylaws, we did seek an accommodation to end at 11:30. If we don't reach that, I guess you could call a motion to recess at 11:30 if you like, but we can go.
No, I'd like to.
That's kind of your options.
My point of information, Mr. Mayor, if I
don't
may,
have
as
the
I'm
floor.
next on the queue. Oh.
You're not on the floor,
okay,
though.
I thought Councillor Carr was out of time. I'm sorry.
I'm just making sure that we have the motion up, and there's the motion there. So I'm just kind of finishing Councillor Carr's time.
I would just like to amend the motion to say that we would finish this item, and then we would we would recess after this item, Mr. Mayor.
Well, this hasn't been seconded, so it's not. We would need
this item is in this agenda item on the council agenda.
Right. You can't do that yet. We're just going to deal with this. Right. So the motion now, the amendment is on screen as
Swanson.
Councillor Swanson. Okay. So wait, just one second, please. Now we're just moving to a second queue. And Councillor Bly, do you have what's your
parliamentary procedure? And I appreciate that our council agendas and meeting times have changed to accommodate our busy agenda this week. I'm just seeing a meeting in our calendars for 11:30. My understanding is this meeting ends at 11:30, hence my motion to extend past 11:30. Can I just get some clarity from the clerk what's on our agenda or schedule for the next hour? Because to me, we have a meeting that's supposed to be happening right now.
Sure, I will. I'll just clarify for you that the 11:30 that was announced today was really an accommodation, but it's not a hard stop as outlined in our procedural bylaws. Our procedural bylaw hard stop is noon. So because of that, we don't need a motion to extend past 11:30. We can just optionally move past it, which we are coming very close to doing. And that's, regardless of other meetings that might be being held elsewhere, that's, we would have to call for a recess at this point, in order to stop at 11:30.
I see. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thanks. On to Councillor DeGenova. You have the floor, up to 5 minutes on the amendment to the amendment.
Mr. Mayor, may I move a motion that we complete this item, referral report number 5 on the agenda, and then we recess?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. It's the clerk here. We already have a motion sitting on the floor.
Okay. All right. I'll do that afterwards. So, Mr. Mayor, I just have to ask a point of information through you, and then I may ask you, or maybe this is something you're already considering. I know it's when you're chairing, you're multitasking as well.
Yep.
So, point of information, if you deem it correct, to the city manager would be just my questions on housing affordability. Did our staff not try as hard as they could on our climate goals and considering our policies at the City of Vancouver? Does this not meet and or exceed those policies, or staff wouldn't be recommending this and bringing it forward? Is there very much that's going to change on that? Did staff not feel that they've tried their best and are coming to us with their best work? So same question, but I guess now on climate, because
over to the city manager then. City manager, do you have for perhaps planning staff whatever you decide?
Yeah, thanks. No, I think I did indicate earlier, and we pushed as hard as we can on these components. But I'll let the planning team elaborate if they would like. Planning staff and Kirsten or.
Hi, this is Kirsten Robinson. Yes, we did push as hard as we could on the rezoning application. We've met the policy for the sustainable large sites, which addresses both housing affordability, including social housing and rental housing, and also the climate change objectives around creating a framework for a long-term phased build-out project, which this is.
And just
Thanks so much.
To add, I mean, I think as the mayor has indicated, this is a semi quasi-judicial process here, and we work with the applicant, and they work with us in good faith. We work to apply our policies, and if at the last minute council decides to require more than is beyond our policies, it really creates a very uncertain environment for developers to work in. And so I guess I kind of want to raise the concern that if we go back to them at this point, delaying this project and saying we want to go even further beyond the policies and beyond what we've been able to achieve at this point, it just creates a very difficult environment for the development community to operate in. So, I think the staff feels like we've pushed extremely hard on this. We've gotten a lot. We're quite proud of what we've been able to achieve. They've met our policies. So, I guess I just would throw that kind of maybe a word of caution out in terms of creating an environment here that projects can proceed. We all talk about trying to move projects through the system quickly and efficiently, and throwing curveballs at the last minute creates a very, very difficult environment to operate in.
Anything else, Councillor Deschanova?
I did want to ask Mr. Mayor if this is then indeed, this is an amendment to the amendment, but is the amendment to the amendment and the amendment indeed in order? And if you need me to look up the section, I can do that. It's just considering we are in referral, and I know that these are the types of questions that we could be asking the applicant at public hearing. But staff have done all that they can, and that's why they're bringing it to us for referral. So I'm just wondering if the amendment to the amendment and the original amendment are indeed in order.
Yep, these two are in order. Both Councillor Swanson's and this amendment to the amendment is in order. Okay. So I understand legally they're in order, but I've already heard from staff that what I understand I'm hearing from staff, and I do invite Mr. Johnston to please correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that staff wouldn't be coming back to us with anything different, that they have done as much as they possibly can, and they don't come to us with 50% of that work done. And if we want more to be done, then those are conditions that can be put forward at the time of the public hearing under the appropriate process. So for that reason, I won't be supporting the amendment or the amendments to the amendments. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. Up to 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. That's a holdover. I was trying to address the need to adjourn.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll take myself off the queue.
Okay, great. Thanks. Councillor Kirby-Young, up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, I have a point of information through you to staff, if I could.
Please go ahead.
And it relates to the language in this amendment, and the spirit of the question is I'm very supportive of trying to achieve the greenest communities we can in the master building, but my question is the language here that says to achieve climate emergency targets, and can you clarify for me if there is a difference between our climate emergency targets towards 2050 versus our current policy that may at the moment have a different standard until we amend the policy?
Right, good question. I don't have the answer to that. Perhaps I can steer it over to the city manager and the planning team.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I will defer to the planning team on this one.
Hi, this is Kristen Robinson again. We're confident that the climate emergency response targets are broad and that the subset of policy directions in the sustainable large sites policy is aligned largely. We know that a number of the targets have been met in the current OTC plan. We can detail this in a yellow memo with more detail if that's helpful for the public hearing.
So a follow-up question, just for clarity then, do we have some of the aspirational targets or goals in the climate emergency plan that are not yet fully aligned in terms of policy being updated with those?
One of the targets is the walkable communities, and that is certainly met in the OTC approach. Another one is access to transit, which is also addressed. We could go through the whole list and provide that information for you if it would be helpful.
Okay. And as it relates to buildings, does this meet the buildings policy? I'm assuming the answer is yes, and bringing it forward. Does it meet
Councillor Kirby-Young, we're still kind of straying into the merits and whether or not it meets
Is it permissible
policies.
to ask? Is it permissible to ask the question and confirm it meets policy, though? I think that's a permissible question, is it not?
Yes, and I believe that's why staff's recommended it. We've heard it a couple of times, but if you want to ask it again, please go ahead.
I guess I'm just asking for clarity on that other key remaining piece, because we've heard yes on transit, yes on walkable communities, and I'm asking yes on buildings, on the actual building.
Yes. It's Kirsten Robinson. Yes, the buildings will meet the large sites policy and the rezoning policy for green buildings, and they will also continue to meet the building code as changes are made in the future.
Okay, thank you. So I guess my question to you, Mr. Mayor, is this amendment in order then, if staff are affirming that those climate targets have already been met in the referral application?
I have discussed this with the clerks, and they have, and with legal, and it has been ruled in order. On both terms, or I'm sure it's in order. This is just it could be a limited amount of work in the sense that if they have to go back and check, essentially it's just a short delay, I imagine, if it's already meeting all their existing policies.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me right now.
Okay, thank you. Sir Boyle, up to 5 minutes.
Thanks. I just wanted to name that I am going back and forth a lot on this. I certainly hear and feel the frustration that we want more affordability out of these types of projects, and we want to continue to strengthen our climate policies on these buildings, and also I feel committed to us doing that work as policy work, and doing good governance and good process in terms of moving the goalposts steadily in our policy work and not mid-project. And I also want to see a mix of housing options in every neighborhood, and this neighborhood is a good one. I hear the frustration that the Oak Ridge development, which we as a council inherited, is not nearly as affordable as this council would have liked, and so we continue to push those policies forward. Regarding the specific climate amendment here, again, I appreciate the intention of both of these, the amendment to the amendment and the original amendment. My understanding is we have some big climate work coming back to us in the fall, but as that work relates to building emissions and transportation, this project looks like it meets a lot of goals already. And so I want us to keep holding projects to those big climate goals, and I don't think we need to keep adding them on as an amendment to each project. Absolutely. That doesn't mean I'm not supportive of continuing to push it, but I don't, we need to do it in this way. And I too am worried we're getting down some wormholes on this. So I keep wrestling with it because I like the goals of it, but I don't know that this is the process for it.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Boyle?
No, that's it for now. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Sorry, I'm just getting, before I call for a vote on this, I'm just getting a message from the clerk I just want to look at here.
Mr. Mayor?
Just one second, please. 1 second, please, Councillor Dejanova. Council, again, I just want to remind you of our procedure bylaw 13.2 that Council may, at this stage, Council may ask questions of staff related to the decision to refer a proposed bylaw to public hearing or otherwise comment on the process leading to the recommendation for referral, except that all other issues regarding the proposed bylaw must be addressed at the public hearing. Just so you're familiar with the bylaw that outlines what we do here. Councillor Dejanova, did you have something? You just have 3 seconds
In
left.
3 seconds? Is it in order then, Mr. Mayor?
It's in order.
Okay.
Okay, great. So I'm going to take us to a vote then. Just waiting for Councillor. Okay, that has passed with myself, Councillor Dejanova, and Councillor Kirby-Yung in opposition. And we're going to go to back to the now amended amendment. Councillor Carr, you're out of time. Councillor Dejanova, you have 1 minute left.
Just very quick answer. Could I get this from the city manager? Mr. Johnson, will staff be coming back with anything different? If they have already tried their best, 100%, is there anything different that will be coming back, or will this just be postponing things? And if you want to mention how much extra work this would take, that would be great.
Over to the city manager. Perhaps.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thanks. I'm not in a position at this point to know what we'll be coming back with, and we'll look at the direction and we will come back to council.
And how much work would that take?
At this point, I'm not sure how much work it'll take. We don't have a lot of time.
I have 10 seconds left, so I won't be supporting this. My apologies for cutting you off, Mr. City Manager, but I wanted to make that clear. I know we have priorities to work on, so for that reason, I won't be supporting.
Okay, Councillor Dominato, 30 seconds.
My question is a point of information and whether an amendment around receiving a yellow memo would be appropriate. I heard that we couldn't get an update by August 31st because we don't have a council meeting, but I wonder if we could get an update electronically or via yellow memo.
City Manager, just very quickly.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is a referral. We'll need to come back with a referral report. So we do need to come back to a council meeting.
Okay, thanks very much. You're out of time, Councillor Dominato. Councillor Swanson?
Yeah. A lot of people claim that the downtown east side is a ghetto and it needs more middle-income housing, and so the previous councils have put in policies that ensure that there is more middle-income housing there, even though it means that the lower-income people get pushed out. Then we have previous councils coming up with plans for Fraser Lands, for the Canby Corridor, for Little Mountain, for this transit center, that all involve basically creating a rich ghetto. And we have this council, which is concerned about affordability and has passed numerous resolutions.
Point of order.
Councillor Swanson.
Can we please not refer to our neighborhoods as rich ghettos? There are a lot of hardworking people that live in them, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to, Councillor Swanson, this is about whether or not we're referring this item for discussion. It's not to pontificate about policies or anything else. It's or about the merits or demerits of this particular project. It is just to decide whether or not to refer it. So
okay, so I'm getting to that, and I'm getting to my reason for that, and I owe it to the people who voted for me to say what my reasons are.
Right, and I just owe it to this chamber to make sure that we stick to the boundaries of the decision. So I'm sorry if I'm appearing rude, but that's kind of my task here, is to just keep us within the boundaries of what we're supposed to be deciding. So thanks. Please go ahead.
So staff are working on a number of proposals to increase affordability. This Oak Ridge Transit project is huge, 26 story buildings and 17 buildings, and it's going to take 10 years. So if we pass this referral now, we will be implementing something for 10 years that's based on policies that we don't necessarily agree with because we're a new council. So I think it's really important for us to implement our values. This is a housing crisis. We need to increase in affordability. We are supposedly a council that believes in inclusivity and equity. We need to include those in the policies that we have so that when we have a huge project like this one, we change. So it's not like Little Mountain. So it's not like the Canby Corridor, so that it really does reflect our values. And I think it's important to pass this motion to tell staff clearly that we need different parameters now. We are a different council. We demand more affordability. And if we can't get it the usual way, we have to try and think of other ways.
Thank you. Councillor Boyle? Might be on mute.
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to be clear that I was fine to support the climate language going into this amendment. If indeed it ends up passing, I won't be supporting the referral. I think this project complies with policy and should go to public hearing where we can and should debate all of these things, and also absolutely will continue to work hard on how we strengthen policies, that we have inherited from past councils to continue increasing the affordability of them. I think there's important work we all continue to do on that front, and I'm certainly committed to, but I won't be supporting delaying this project in the meantime. Thanks.
Councillor Fry, I just have a minute left here.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, Ken.
Oh, okay. My system shut down. I obviously don't have a lot of time, and I realize that the conversations that we've had. I recognize this report was tabled in June 10th, and I'm just not confident, given the report that we got yesterday about capital plan recalibration and the serious reprioritizations that we're looking at, and to Councillor Swanson's points about how we need to really work on some of the affordable housing stuff. We've since looked towards redefining affordable housing, social housing, these kind of things. And my experience earlier was referenced to hospice, which we weren't given a real choice to refer this back. We were told very point blank we had to actually reject or approve that proposal, and it didn't give us the flexibility to come back with changes that wouldn't require another public hearing. So I think this could use a bit more work.
Thank you. Thank you. I put myself on the list, and I'll just cede the chair to Councillor Fry, if you don't mind, and I can start the timer. Thanks. Okay, Council. So just to reiterate, here's what we're doing. Councils, going back time immemorial, have set policies that guide our decision-making process, and the people who operate, within this system, residents, property owners, business owners have a set of policies that they have to follow when they're trying to make change to either their land or other parts of the city. Staff are obliged to follow the policies that are passed. And that's how it works. There's an application, for example, in this development, somebody buys a piece of land, they look at all the policies, they submit an application to staff. Staff makes sure that they go through all these policies as required, and then it moves from staff working with the applicant to our decision. And that's all we're deciding here today. So I don't know how after 2 years we're still kind of confused about this, is that we do have leeway within public hearings in our decisions to make changes. Bylaws are legally binding. Policies are not legally binding in terms of what we decide to do with a piece of property. The policies are there to guide what's put in place. According to staff, they do not, and I believe them, and I don't have any reason to disbelieve them, is that the staff look at all the policies that we've made. They make sure that these applications meet all these constraints of the policies, all the requirements that are in place, and they only bring it to us for decision once they've done their work. And so that's what's happening here today. Now, I understand that councillors don't like the policies that have guided this work, but then that's our job to change them. And so in not referring this, it is almost, because it's a quasi-judicial hearing, it is almost like denying a property owner his or her time in court. That's kind of like what we're doing here. And we're saying, well, we don't like the criminal, if it was a criminal case, it would be like, well, we don't like what the criminal law is, so we have to go back to Parliament and change that before we hear your case, which is a denial of due process. So we really have to be careful on why we're making our decisions here. If these debates that we're having should be held in the public hearing, we did have choices in all the public hearings that we've had to reject or refer back, or to just say no to projects that we don't want, and we just haven't done that on too many occasions. So I understand I've lost votes on this council. Other councillors have lost votes. It is frustrating to lose votes, but that's the democratic process. And so what I'm quite worried about here is that we've because we haven't changed our policies fast enough for council's liking, we are somehow deviating from our, I think, what is our obligation as council members in our service to the public. So I'm not going to vote for this referral back. I want this to come to public hearing so we can have all these debates in the proper form within the legal context that the public can hear and also input into this, and then have the three choices in front of us: to approve, to reject, or to refer for changes. So that's why I won't be voting to support this amendment, although the principles I completely agree with. And in fact, I'm very heartened to hear through the points of information that staff have assured us that the climate change policies that we've enacted are met by this, and that the affordability has been increased, although that is content. So I want to hear all that in the proper forum, which is the public hearing. So thanks so much, Councillor Fry, and if I can take back the chair, I'll turn it over to Councillor Kirby-Young.
Please go ahead.
Mayor Stewart, sorry,
yes.
It's the clerk here. I do pardon the interruption, but we only have 6 minutes left of the meeting. Before you call for the vote, it might be a good idea to look at continuing the meeting perhaps to finish this item and recessing and reconvening tomorrow morning to complete the items.
So moved, Councillor DeGenova.
Okay, thanks. Seconder? Great, thanks. We'll call the yeas and nays on this then. So all in favor say yay.
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 Opposed say nay. Thank you very much. We'll go to Councillor Kirby-Young, 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. I also share a lot of the sentiments. I think we all have the same goals. I think the question is how we get there, and for that reason, because I would love to see a lot of our policies strengthened, and I think we're working on that. But I'm also very cognizant of the governance role that we have, and those responsibilities. And so, anyway, for contextually, I have sent in a quick amendment to add to the end of the current one sitting on the table and report back by October 2020. And the reason I have added that is that if the majority of council does end up voting for this referral, I don't want it to be open-ended and not to have some timeliness about it coming back and some of those unintended consequences that was referenced earlier. So it is to add those words and report back by October 2020.
Happy to second that, Mayor.
Okay, thanks. So I just need the text. I know we've had a little trouble with sending text in, Council.
It has gone into the clerk.
Okay, great. And if the clerks could just pull that up on the screen whenever they get a chance.
Mayor Stewart, if you could just give us a moment, the meeting coordinator just received it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Call the question on the amendment to the amendment.
On the amendment, to call the question. Okay, we just have to get it up on screen, Councillor.
You have to be on the queue to call the question.
That is true. We also need this seconded before.
Mayor Stewart, again, yes. the clerk here, my apologies. We should be in Q2. This would be an amendment to the amendment.
Yes, and I don't think we've had a seconder yet. Have we, clerks?
I thought we had a seconder.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, point of parliamentary procedure.
Yes, go ahead to Councillor Dejanova.
You were just checking something with the city manager, and I just didn't understand. Is it in order to have it be October? I wasn't sure. My apologies. I was waiting to hear that back.
I have checked at it, and this is in order. The reason why is because we do have council. We have council dates scheduled for October, so we could meet this obligation. So council, we now are in amendment queue, and Councillor Carr, you have the floor, up to 5 minutes.
Yes, call the question.
Okay. I'm happy to do that. That does require 2 votes then, where there is nobody else on your after you, so maybe quicker just to go ahead to the vote. I could call the vote now. If you
fine. That's fine.
Okay, thanks. So call the vote on this amendment to the amendment. Okay, the council, that has passed with Councillor Dejanova in opposition. I'm going back. Clerks have got the result up. Thank you, clerks. Going back to the amendment queue. So, Councillor Kirby-Young, you have 2 minutes left, 3 minutes left.
Yeah, I mean, I think I expressed it, and I'll just say it again very, very simply and quickly, is that I'm fully supportive of building the greenest communities that we can and the deepest level of housing affordability. And I think there is work to strengthen the policies. Having said that, I take our governance role very seriously, and an application comes forward to us from staff if it has met the current existing policies, whether or not we feel that we like them or feel that they can be improved. And so I try to balance those components, and I don't necessarily want to delay. I'm also cognizant that typically as a global statement, not specific to this application, but saying globally and within the lines, is that housing affordability is something that is deepening, that is typically determined at that stage and beyond when we look to working with other government partners and nonprofits and others to deliver on that. So in terms of being distinct about the 2 constructs and our different roles, I'm hesitant to see a delay on this, but I am happy that if Council determines to do the referral report, that delay would be a short one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dejanova. You have used your entire time on this, so I'm going to move on.
I moved the motion, Mr. Mayor. I'll go to close on the motion after.
This is still the amendment, the amended amendment. Councillor Dominato, you have also reached your full time. So unless we're going to have a movement for a second round on this amended amendment, I will move to a vote. So I don't hear a motion, so I'm going to move to the vote on this item, which again, clerks, have you got it on the screen before I call the vote? Okay. Yes, it is on the screen. Councillor Swanson, you may want to mute there for us. Thanks very much.
Mr. Mayor, can I have a point of information, just quickly, or point of privilege? Could we have it emailed to us? There have been significant changes, and my screen isn't loading correctly with my pylon here, so I want to make sure I have the right text.
We are in the middle of a vote. I understand the privilege, so just I'll ask the clerk to email it to you and give you sufficient time to read it.
No, I don't need time to read it. Just want to make sure I have the correct version here. Thank you.
Okay. Council, we're still proceeding with the vote, so if you haven't voted, unless you would also like a copy, could you let me know through privilege? Okay. Whenever you're ready, Councillor Dejanova.
Mr. Mayor, as I'd mentioned, I'm having some technical difficulties, so if I could get a vote assist in opposition.
In opposition. Okay. Again, Councillor Swanson, if you could mute, that would be great. Thanks, Council. So that has passed with Councillor Boyle, Kirby-Young, and Dejanova in opposition. And that was the amendment. Clerks, now we're back to the main queue. We have an amended, we have the motion as amended. Councillor Swanson, anything else?
Oh, point of privilege, Mr. Mayor. I think I voted incorrectly. Were we just voting on the amendment with the date addition?
We were. Clerks, can you just tell us where we are in the voting process?
Was it with the date addition,
Yes.
the amended amendment?
Mayor Stewart, it's the clerk here. Given that the last motion was a motion to refer, that's the end of the voting.
Okay. So we have, so that was it, Council, that we have voted to refer this back with the October date. Clerks, if you could put the what we've decided on the screen.
I think I voted incorrectly, Mr. Mayor.
We'd have to reconsider the vote in order for you to change it.
Mayor Stewart, we are getting it on the screen.
Yeah, see it on the screen. So this is what we voted for. Council refer the referral back to staff to find more housing affordability and ensure plans include measures to achieve climate emergency and report back by October 2020.
It's fine. It's not going to change the outcome of the vote. I don't want to take more time, but I'll just save the record. And that was my
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Staff, Council. So that concludes that matter.
Matter
of urgent. Yes, Councillor Bly.
Thank you. I have a matter of urgent business, a request for an LOA between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock today for personal reasons.
Okay, thanks. Clerks, this is in order to bring this forward now for a vote.
Mayor Stewart, it's being brought up under urgent business. We did not have it included in the motion for extending the meeting, but
I'm happy to move it, Councillor Dejanova.
Just one
if
second.
It's council's will.
Okay.
Procedure, have we actually voted to extend the meeting for other business?
We have not.
So are we not over time?
We are done, I think, clerks, actually.
Mayor Stewart, it's the clerk here. Yes, you did pass a motion to extend the meeting to finish this business. And then you included in that motion was to recess and to reconvene tomorrow at 9:30 to conclude the meeting.
Am I correct that you can have a retroactive LOA if it's missed? Yes,
that is correct.
Councillor Black, can I suggest that's what you do, because we actually are officially finished now until 1? Does that work for you?
I appreciate that. I will do that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Council. So we are done, and we are back at, is it 1 o'clock, clerks, for the go in the standing committee?
That is correct, Mayor Stewart. There is the reconvening of the Standing Committee commencing at 1 p.m.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much, Council, and we'll see you then, in about an hour. Thanks very much.